Greetings and salutations, nerds. This is Praying for Superpowers, a show about the deeper meanings, messages, and intricacies hidden within nerd culture. I'm Trever Shirin, and today I'm talking about Denethor the Hero. All right, first things first, we need to have some differentiation between Denethor in the movies and Denethor in the books. Denethor is one of the most drastically different between the books and the adaptation through Peter Jackson. In the movies, Denethor is seen as this cowardly, mad ruler who's power hungry and unwilling to give up any amount of power that he has. In the books, he's actually portrayed as somebody who's worthy of his Númenórean blood, somebody who is wise and steadfast, somebody who has the gift of foresight and is able to read into the hearts of men. I think both of these characteristics are going to be important in this conversation because I think that we, in both, have this inaccurate perception of who Denethor is. And I think that if we were to change just a few things about his situation and how we look at him, we would actually see him as a hero. The first thing I think I want to clear up is in the books, Denethor does not send Faramir out to his death. In fact, Denethor has experienced significant loss throughout the past 30 years or so. Probably more. I think it's about 60 years. He lost his wife. His wife died, who he loved. He lost his son Boromir, and then Faramir dies protecting Minas Tirith. It's also very clear that Denethor realizes that his kingdom is in dire need, that there is a great evil coming against him. And so he chooses to use the Palantir. I think this is one of the first things that we see about Denethor that makes me respect him a lot. We see two characters who use the Palantir to protect themselves and the people that they are ruling over. Saruman and Denethor. Now, Saruman is a wizard like Gandalf, and he is kind of beyond this world of Middle-earth. And yet, when Saruman looks into the Palantir, this object that allows you to see into the past and see around the world and communicate with other individuals who have possession of Palantirs, Sauron cannot lie through the Palantir. He can misconstrue the truth, and he does that with both Saruman and Denethor, showing them ships and enemies that aren't necessarily on Sauron's side, but make it look like the army that Sauron has amassed is beyond compare. Like, you cannot fight against Sauron. And so Saruman falls for Sauron's gimmick. He basically says, like, okay, well, if I can't fight against you, then I'm going to join with you, and I'm going to accept your offerings of power. I believe that the same things were offered to Denethor, but Denethor is very clearly stated to be too strong to be corrupted directly by Sauron, which is an impressive thing to read in the books, that somebody is too strong to be corrupted by Sauron directly. And so Sauron then has to find ways to manipulate Denethor that Denethor won't be able to catch on to. Sometimes I think we can read our own press too much, and this may have happened with Denethor, where his pride and his arrogance sort of got in the way, and so he wasn't listening to the advisors around him. So he leads from this very authoritarian perspective of, I know best, I know what's coming, so you need to do what I tell you to do. Even when Gandalf the Grey shows up, he chooses not to listen to what Gandalf has to say, and some of this, I think, is his unwillingness to give up control. And as I'm thinking about it from the perspective of a counselor, this makes a ton of sense to me, because if any of us have experienced a moment when we didn't feel like we had any control over a situation, a relationship, it is so easy for us to just cling to any amount of control we can hold on to when we feel like things are out of control. And for Denethor, he's ruling a kingdom that is falling apart and being attacked by a vast army, one that has never been seen before. He also has this gift of foresight. He also has the Palantir. So he is very much aware of what's happening. And while he's being manipulated by Sauron, a lot of the things that he's seeing are true. They are up against something that is destructive and apocalyptic. Put this into the mix that he has just experienced 3 major losses in his life: his wife and his 2 sons, the closest people to him. It also is in a time when the line of men seems to be dissolving, which brings in another character that we've talked about before, Aragorn. Aragorn and Denethor actually have a past together. And my hope is that we see this in the Amazon series, because I think what I'm hearing is some of that series is going to focus in on Aragorn. Aragorn was going under a pseudonym when he worked with the Men of Gondor, and he was seen as this revered warrior. And I think we see a little bit of parallel here between Denethor and Aragorn with David and Saul in the Bible, where David had songs sung about him of David's the king has killed his thousands, David his tens of thousands. This is kind of the attitude that the people of Gondor had towards Denethor and Aragorn during the reign of Ithilien, Denethor's father. So when Denethor comes into power, it is not surprising that he would have a distrust and almost a hatred towards Aragorn, having not really known his bloodline, but feeling this threat against his rulership, something that was his birthright. So then in the books and the movies, we come to this point where Denethor gives up. He says it's hopeless. Everybody is going to die. And according to his despair and the things that he's been shown through the Palantir, it makes sense that he would feel that way. And even though he has advisors around him that are telling him, like Gandalf, no, you need to stand and fight, there's still hope, he doesn't listen. And I think some of that is the arrogance that I talked about earlier. There's a few interesting parallels between Denethor and our common hero. I think our common hero is often found in a place where they're up against great odds, and they choose to ignore some advice, whether that's from a trusted advisor or everybody around them. They choose to ignore it because they believe that out of their own power, they will be able to overcome the enemy. Denethor has the same thing, where he uses the Palantir, something that I'm sure he would have been advised against during this time. But he thought, and in a lot of ways knew, that he was not in a great danger by using the Palantir. We often see a hero use something that we would not recommend to their benefit to make an advantage. This is a pretty common trope of the hero chooses to grab the cursed sword and use it to bind the power of darkness, and it ends up working out. I think the difference here with Denethor is that it doesn't work out. The reason that we don't see Denethor as a hero is because he falls into despair and he gives up. Those are the things that we see the hero come to a moment when everything is crashing in around them. We're at that climactic moment in the story or the movie, and everything around them says, give up. And then there comes in the one voice that says, don't give up. There is still hope. We still have a chance here. And that is when the hero rises up and chooses to keep fighting, even though it seems hopeless. With Denethor, he doesn't get up. And I think really, in a lot of ways, that's the only difference between Denethor and our heroes. The rest of it makes sense in a human context, that if he feels like everything's out of control, he would grasp on to whatever control he has. Something that we occasionally see a hero not do, but it's not uncommon for a hero to do something like that. And finally, our heroes don't give up. That's the big thing. Denethor does. He falls into despair, and rightly so. He just lost his last son. His kingdom is being attacked by an army that is beyond anything he's ever seen before, even through the Palantir. He feels as though this is the end of the world, and so in his despair, he gives up. I think sometimes we actually need to see the hero that fails in order to have a better respect and understanding of the hero who doesn't. By being able to see how Denethor falls into despair, into hopelessness, into just giving up, I think that it makes it so much more powerful when we see Aragorn not, or even Theoden, who chooses to do the opposite, is in this place of despair and comes back. This contrast is really important in our storytelling, to be able to see what could have been on either side. And so I want to challenge us to think about Denethor and what could have been. Could he have been a hero that had risen up and built an army and prepared Gondor for the war that was coming? And then when Aragorn arrives and he hears about this bloodline, said, okay, you are the rightful king of Minas Tirith. You are the rightful king of Gondor. I will relent my power to you. How can I serve you? Obviously, this is a far stretch from the Denethor we see in the movies or in the books. But I wonder what would happen if he had been humble enough to take in the advice of others, the counsel of others, and use some of the strength that we read about in the books to be indomitable in the very end. I think the true flaw of Denethor is one that every single human being is susceptible to, and that's simply one of pride, of thinking too much of ourselves and not being willing to humble ourselves to hear wisdom and to see the other voices that are speaking to us. So that's my concept about why Denethor is actually a hero who gave up, and that's why we don't see him as a hero. Not only did he give up, but he was so prideful and so arrogant that he wasn't allowing himself to hear the wisdom and the counsel of others. My encouragement to you is to take this as an example of what not to do. Go forward and listen to the wise counsel that you have around you. And if you don't have that, find it. Seek out the people who are going to be able to speak truth and hope into your life. And also, don't think too much of yourself. I think it's really easy for us to get pretty haughty and prideful, and to think that we're the only ones that can do something and that we should do it on our own. We see this with heroes all the time, where they think that they are the only ones that can do it, and then they end up doing it much better because they have companions by their sides. I'm a huge advocate for community, and I think that community is one of the things that makes us better, no matter who we are. So find some community, and if you can't seem to track down any of them, I hope that you find some amount of community through Ogrids. And I would love to hear from you in the comments below on your thoughts about Denethor the Hero.